Hey guys, TJ here, recording a follow-up video to my Meiko guide to talk about what to do once you get your legendaries. I didn't cover them basically at all in the previous video, and I also didn't cover any of the talents I think the legendaries unlock in that video, so here we are. The first thing I want to talk about is the talents that I don't think you should be taking before your legendary, but are very strong tools after you get your legendary. First I'll talk about Earthwell. Earthwell actually I think I missed on this a little bit in the guide. I do think Earthwell has a use case before you get your legendary. But basically this talent is just going to make it so that in situations where you're using your earth spenders, you're going to get a lot bigger and more frequent serenities. Now, I do think this talent has a use case inside of the Ransack of Drakheim. I think having a big Serenity for every single Frostbite on the troll boss, I don't know his name right now, but the first boss in there is actually really strong. Whether you have a legendary or not, I think this talent is good. Now, I'm going to show you the boots, which will show you why that talent can also be good with the legendary. When you use Serenity, you're going to gain DR based on the stacks consumed, and when your Serenity DR expires, it's going to do a bunch of damage based on the stacks consumed. So obviously that has a pretty favorable interaction if your Serenities are bigger and more frequent with Earthwell. So yeah, this talent is good, and honestly I could see it being used even before the legendary, specifically in Ransack. Maybe in Heart of Tazari as well, but it's much more awkward to take Earthwell when you have a lot less points available to you, so probably just in Ransack before you get your legendary. Another thing to talk about with Earthwell is that if you happen to loot the neck, Earthwell is basically required, as looting the neck means you'll never use your kicks again. So the gameplay loop with the neck is basically you generate, you'll have 2 Earthfall charges, and then you'll spend, and this uppercut consumes your second Earthfall charge. So it's generate, spend, instead of the normal cadence, which is generate, spend, generate, spend. Now, the big thing about the neck is that uppercut cleaves everything, right? This is why you will use punches and AoE with the neck always. And that uppercut cleave gives you 1 stack of Serenity per target hit. So not only are you getting the base Earthwell value, you're also getting +1 Serenity for every single target you have in the pull. This brings Earthwell up to probably the best Stone Shield uptime possible in AoE of any talent, maybe even competitive with Guardian's Fluidity, as you're going to be sending in really big pulls 50 stack Serenities on cooldown with the neck. Now, we'll get to why the neck isn't as good as the boots later, but just understand that if you do end up looting the neck, you put on Earthwell. No matter what you like playing, you put on Earthwell, and it's gonna help you a ton. The next talent I want to talk about is Peacefield. I missed on this talent. Going into the season, I didn't think this talent was good, and I was wrong. This talent is really crazy once you get a legendary. The reason this talent is so insane is because with both the legendaries, we're sending pretty big Serenities very frequently. And Peacefield can double dip on stats, basically, especially expertise. So when you Serenity, Peacefield takes that number, and then applies stat to that number with the Peacefield hot. So whenever you press if you're kicking, you're going to be pressing about a 30 stack Serenity every 3 spenders with the boots. And then this thing is going to give you, this thing's going to give you probably more healing than that Serenity in some cases, even though it says only 40%. It can actually just do more healing than the Serenity over those 9 seconds, which is super, super helpful to bridge the gap between Serenities, makes you super self-sufficient, just makes the game super easy to play. I am gonna run this talent permanently. I just think it makes the game too easy to play, even though it doesn't give you any stone shield uptime or DR of the sort. It just frees up so much space for other things on your mind than you're bouncing health bar and slowly bleeding out. Yeah, and then after Peacefield, we'll talk about Warden. This talent is only good if you have the boots, and it's required if you have the boots. Once you get the boots, you will never take this talent point off. It's just too strong, too valuable. Just interacts with the boots too well. And honestly, it interacts with the character too well after we don't have the opportunity to keep up buffs forever with Will of Stone and Earthborn. It gives you the opportunity to refresh your palm buffs without actually losing the globals, right? You want to be refreshing your palm buffs because these spenders are so valuable. So it kind of just interacts with both the character and the boots really well. I don't think it's worth it before the legendary because of the price point, but it's absolutely required once you get the boots. So this talent is weird. It basically gives you an empowered palm spender every 3 Earthfall or Stormfall charges. So I have 1 right now from that punch from earlier, which means when I consume the second one, I'm going to go to 2, and then the third one, I go to 3. Once you're at 3, you have an option between the 2 palm spenders, so 1 being double palm strike, 1 being spirited vortex. Now, this is a decision that you get to make. I almost always just put it into the palm strike because I think the serenity charges are too strong. You are allowed to use them on spirited vortex, but just understand that spending these temple charges on spirited vortex is a damage decision. It gives you 10% dodge, yes. It will never be better than the Serenity defensively, and it's actually not even that much better offensively either. In single target, keeping up an Empowered Vortex is pretty strong with Harsh Winds, but still only offensively. If you wanted to only ever spend your Temple stacks on Palm Strike for the Serenity charges, I would support that decision. I think min-maxing the damage from Spirited Vortex here is not worth it, and if you try to start doing it in AoE, you're probably going to be losing some keys to the defensive loss. So what that ends up meaning is later in the pull, because you still want to keep Spirited Vortex up, obviously. This is the build that I've been playing lately, so I have Harsh Winds, I have Debilitating Vortex. So keeping Spirited Vortex up is very important, but I try to time it around not consuming my temple stacks. I'm not always successful. Sometimes I do empower my Vortex because I refreshed at a bad time, but my goal is to spend all my Warden's stacks on Palm Strike and then only keep up Vortex manually in between my Will of Stones. Now, this also brings me to another point. You are now, with the boots and Warden, allowed to drop Will of Stone. So this gives you, I think the main application of this is it gives you the opportunity to do some fisting, is what we call it. It makes this Earthwell talent much easier to take. I do not drop Will of Stone, for what it's worth. I don't think I will drop Will of Stone, for what it's worth, but it gives you access to this talent tree. Now before I get into why dropping Will of Stone is bad, I'll explain why this talent tree works. With the boots, this talent tree is built to fist in AoE. Now, what fisting in AoE does is it gives you, I'll hit these dummies so you can actually see it. So if I go into a pull and I start fisting here, oh, I need to hit apply, sorry. And I start fisting here, my serenities, instead of being about 30 stacks, when I hit this Warden finisher right here, I'm at 45 stacks. So even though my rotation isn't doing anything to the mobs, it's giving me so much serenity, which gives me damage through the serenity pop and gives me a ton of DR through the legendary. So every single serenity is 50 stacks as long as I'm fisting. This does actually end up being a damage gain. This does end up being a pretty big durability gain at a healing loss. But it does put a massive strain on your rotational play in the game. So you are gonna, if you play a key perfect with this setup, you're gonna be a lot stronger defensively. You're gonna do more damage. But the downside here is that threat is gonna be extremely difficult if you ever mess up, if you ever lose a global, you are probably dying and your team is probably tanking. Threat in this game works in really weird ways, probably to combat kiting, but threat is basically a measurement of what you've done over the last 8 to 10 seconds. I don't know the number exactly, but I think it's about 10 seconds because you're sending serenities around every 12 seconds on average. And between my serenity pops, I do sometimes lose threat when I'm fisting, which to me means my threat's expiring between the pops. So you're basically in a race with threat to use your first serenity, get the damage from your legendary, and then get to your next serenity as fast as possible. Because the only ways you're applying threat when you're fisting is through Stone Shield, Shatter Earth, and your serenity pops, which are all just random, relatively random AoE damage events, right? Not your rotation. Where with kicks, you're always applying a good chunk of threat. You have a little more access to harsh winds with kicks because you don't have to take Earthwell, so your vortex is doing quite a bit more damage. And you don't have as much of a reliance on buffs. You still could play Will of Stone. I think Unwavering Spirit's a little bit too strong once you start getting this deep into the game, but it's basically just going to make threat a lot harder, and it's going to make mistakes kill your key, basically. I don't recommend fisting. I did it for a really long time. I don't do it anymore because I think it's more important that the game is easy for the tank than the character is stronger. But I know Yoda is fisting. I know a couple EU guys are fisting as well, and they're doing it completely fine. And when I was playing it really well, I was completely fine as well. The one thing I will say, if you want to commit to the fisting, is kick for the first pull. The biggest downside with fisting is that you'll see here when I spend on Earth Fist Barrage, my global actually comes up about half a global before the barrage is done. This varies based on your haste. This is why I say haste is super strong when you're fisting. But that means your wardens are going to be delayed. And in the first pull, you live and die based on how quickly you get your first serenity out. So my opinion is, even if you want to fist for the key, just kick on the first pull until you get your first serenity out, and then you can start fisting, because the kicks always eat the same amount of time, and the Earth Fist eats like a global and a half on the second global, so the cadence gets a little slower. One last thing about fisting, not necessarily a big thing because you can't really die to bosses either way, but if you're playing Earthwell on a boss fight, you are just never gonna die to a boss. You're gonna be able to empower your vortex for damage through Warden, and you're still gonna have 50 stack serenities all over the place. There is no boss in this game that can kill a well-played Meiko with this setup. I still also don't think there's a boss that in the game that can kill a well-played Meiko with this setup either, but Earthwell is just ridiculous on boss fights when you have the boots. That's about it for fisting, so I'll talk about the general gameplay loop of the boots. At least I'll play these talents for it. Most pulls you're gonna go into with a big Serenity, and this really cleans up the gameplay loop. But for the sake of this video, I'm gonna go into a pull with nothing up. Because this is where most people are gonna win or lose, is how well they do the first pull. So just like my last video, I do the gather the exact same way. Like get in combat with everything. Let's say it's 2 packs, I taunt far, get them together, Cyclone, Sibling, Shatter, Faded, Earth Shield. Now with Warden, you're in a race to get out 3 spenders. So I got 2 spenders, no spirit proc, so I have to generate and get another one out. And when I get to this spender, I use the Warden stacks on a palm and I send a 40 stack Serenity. That Serenity basically means you won. Once you make it to that, you win. Little things that you can do to make this easier. For example, obviously these training dummies can't move, but if my pull starts over here, when I dismount first global, instead of just mounting and running through stuff, you should dismount and use your global, dash, use your global again, dash, get to the middle, Cyclone, Sibling. Just like that, you've already done like a third of the race to get to your first Warden. It is not good to sit there and tank. Like if this was a full pack, not good to sit here and tank these to get the globals out. But if it's just one random mob, you could even sit there and tell your team, hey, I'm gonna hit this mob for 3 globals, get to your Warden, and then go in. I had to do that in Silken Hollow. The first pull was a little bit too hard for me. So I sat there and fought 2 mobs at the right for 5 globals and got my ramp out, and I was completely immortal because of it. But if you wanna both be a fast, aggressive tank and get your first Warden out, it's very good to dismount at the first mob, hit it once, dash through, hit the next mob, dash through, just like that. The next thing you're gonna have to worry about, aside from just getting through your rotation and using your Warden stacks, is whenever you've gotten about 30 seconds into the pull, your Spirited Vortex is gonna fall. Obviously your double palm strike isn't gonna fall because you're using it to make Serenity stacks, but your Vortex is gonna fall, and if you don't find a good time to refresh it, you're probably just gonna die at the later half of the pull. This happens about once every pull. You just need to remember to refresh it. The best time I've found to refresh it is when I have a Serenity ready. So almost always when I get 3 Warden stacks, I can use the double palm buff and then sit on those Serenity stacks until I really need them in order to get my Vortex out. I don't look at my buffs to refresh Vortex. I look at my Shatter cooldown. So if I Shatter and then Faded Strikes, when my Shatter says 20 seconds, my Vortex is falling. So anytime after this thing says 30, you can refresh your Vortex and you're going to maintain uptime. Anytime after this 30 stack right here. And I just always do it around my Serenity timings to be safe. But it's so important to keep this Vortex up, and I see it drop a lot even in the highest end. Just make sure if you're playing defensively to not use your Warden stacks on it, which is also why I do it after the palm strike. Beyond that, beyond the first pull, I think the game gets really, really easy. You're gonna benefit more and more the more you're able to bank at the end of a pull. So if this is the end of a pull, I don't have any Serenity here, it's gonna be really good to just get these Serenity stacks and then start banking up another Warden. The more the better. You could get all the way up to 3 Warden and generate your kicks or your punches for next pull, and instantly I am already completely immortal for the next pull, right? I can just walk through the mobs, have a good time. I have a 40 stack Serenity ready that's going to give me a bunch of DR and pop for infinite threat, and I have a Warden ready to instantly get the Serenity stacks back. So these are the kind of scenarios I call banking, right? You have a Serenity ready, you're ready to tank for another good 12 seconds, and you have a Warden ready. So how you play around this is you get a double palm strike ready. Let's say we're doing our opener. I'm just walking through the mobs, shatter for buffs, and I send my Serenity to heal, and I instantly spend again to get it back, and then I just go into my kicks here. And if you're able to bring this kind of stuff into a pull, you are going to feel completely immortal sending back-to-back 30 stack Serenities. And that's how most of your pulls after the first pull are going to look. That's kind of why these boots are so strong, because once you get into the cycle, you just can't really die. But that's what the general gameplay is going to look like later. You just keep this Warden buff spent on double palm for Serenity stacks, and refresh your Vortex 30 seconds into the pull. And if you do that, you're probably going to be able to make it really far, just from that alone. That's pretty much about it for the boots. I wouldn't worry about empowering your Vortex too much. I know the Warden says it does a lot, but the Serenity stacks from your Legendary are competitive with empowering your Vortex and AoE. I believe perfect Vortex play with Warden is about a 5% DPS gain in AoE, which to me is just not worth it with how much durability you're getting out of the Serenity stacks. Now, the one last thing, if you want to drop Will of Stone, which again would look like this, you still need to keep up Vortex. You need to find the globals. I didn't think it was worth it. I thought finding the globals was too hard. It put me too far behind my pacing. I think Will of Stone is just so much easier to play. But if you want to play Earthwell, you want to play the more difficult play style, you still need to keep up Vortex. And that talk about just fighting some random one mob earlier to get ramped into a pull before your first pull, probably need to do that in every dungeon if you're going to try Earthwell. But that's about it for the boots, unless I'm forgetting something. But yeah, basically TLDR is you need to send all your Warden stacks on double palm, and you're going to have to refresh your Vortex halfway into a pull, and use Peacefield. It's just kind of OP. Now, the next legendary I want to talk about is the neck. I don't have it on hand. I already explained what it did, but now I can show kind of the build you're going to be looking for when you're playing with the neck and what it does to your gameplay. So the neck is interesting. It doesn't give you any DR. It messes with your rotation a lot, but it gives you a ton of healing, and it doesn't rely on any of the 3-point nodes to get there. So the neck has a super linear playstyle. I think this is probably what I would play with the neck. You could move around conclusive if you want, maybe to Stone Guard if you need more Stone Shield uptime. I actually think this build has the best Stone Shield uptime, but the least overlapping DR with it. So I'd probably play conclusive. You could play Stone Guard, you could play Harsh Winds, but I think conclusive is the best option here. Gameplay loops for the neck are basically you just sit here, you generate once, you fist once, and then you generate once, and then you fist once. You just alternate between it because each fist is consuming both your Earthfall charges. Generate once, fist once. And the reason the neck can work is because it uses Earthwell so well. I can't entirely show it, obviously, but you're going to be getting more... You're probably going to be getting more Serenities in AoE than you would with the boots. They're just not going to give you DR. You basically, if you play WoW, turn into a Blood Death Knight. You you have this full heal coming at the end of every barrage, and then you have a Serenity to get you to the next one. The reason this this legendary isn't that competitive defensively though, even though it gives you so much healing, is because you kind of just die between your Earth Fist barrages. You spend so much time generating that you can often die between your big heals. I think Peacefield helps to cover this weakness a lot. But if you were going to get one shot by a pack, Peacefield isn't going to help you out. You don't have that Serenity DR that the other boot legendary has. All you have is really, really big healing, and that's kind of it. I do think the boots are viable. I think you can take the boots really far. Or sorry, the neck is viable. You can take the neck really far, but I don't think you can take it quite as far. Another really nice thing about the boots is there's a lot of situations where you can out heal anything, but you just can't live the hit, right? One example of this would be Cithral's first boss. In my group, I just solo the soaks. Every single time I solo the soaks, you just have a Serenity DR rolling, you maybe refresh your Earth Shield with Resonance. I even was able to do that boss without Resonance because of the boots. And I don't think I could do that with the neck. I think I would just lose because it's not a lot of damage intake overall, but you just get one shot, and the neck doesn't give you any DR, right? Another downside of the neck compared to the boots is you're spending a lot less instances of Earthwell, of Earthfall, which means you end up getting a lot lower spirited armor uptime. So obviously that means you're getting less value out of Unwavering Spirit. That's not too big of a deal, but you're very low uptime on spirited armor. This ends up meaning that Spirit defensively becomes almost something that you rely on. When you're kicking, or you're spending one stack of Earthfall at a time with the other legendary, you're getting a lot of a lot of spirited armor uptime, and that's going to be able to keep you safe. But with the neck, you almost rely on getting a ton of spirit because you don't have any DR, and that's the only way to get it. But you also at the same time can't proc spirit as often. So my opinion with the neck, people disagree with me on this, but I think the most important thing is surviving. So I value haste and spirit above everything else when I'm playing with the neck, because I just need to make it to my next Earth Fist barrage, and anything to get me there faster is better. I think in terms of overall viability, the neck is going to give you competitive damage, and if you could pull off something like Forbidden Technique, I don't even know how I would actually play Forbidden Technique, to be honest. But if you could pull off Forbidden Technique, it'll probably do the most damage, but at some point you're sacrificing so much to get there that it's probably not worth it. The last legendary, of course, is the Cloak. I do have the Cloak, so I can show it. I believe the Cloak is getting a buff, but this thing kind of just exists to give you something to be sad about looting. What I heard is that Sibling is going to have 50% increased health and duration instead of 20%. This means that Sibling is going to live, in my keys, like 6 to 8 seconds instead of like 4 seconds. Not good. Even with the buffs. The buff, by the way, if this does end up happening, would be a massive increase to damage through the legendary. But funny enough, probably still not more than the boots. So the cape, in my opinion, obviously you have an incentive to play Earthborn because more siblings is more damage. I still don't even think you would play Earthborn with the Cloak. I think if I had the Cloak, I would probably play something like this. You might even need to play Stone Guard for Rumbling Stone. I think if you have the cloak, you're kind of just starving defensively, and it's just not viable. It's just not giving you anything. It's not giving you the healing from the neck, it's not giving you the mitigation from the boots. You're kind of just playing base Meiko, except your sibling might take a couple extra swings for you. So if you loot the cloak, I'm sorry, is my guide on the cloak. You're playing the same character you were playing before you looted it. Now, just generally speaking, if you do loot a legendary, you put it on immediately. It's a huge item level item, and it has a 100% socket bonus. Obviously, you can see here I have my biggest gem in my boots, and this is what it does to the tree. So it is absolutely worth it to equip any legendary, no matter which one you get. But still, if you loot the cloak, I'm sorry. I hope I didn't miss anything. I think I pretty much got it. But that's it from me, guys. Feel free to ask me any questions in the comments if you think I missed anything. But otherwise, see you next time.